Well, apparently we're back on the air. This is now essentially part two of this episode. Viewership through the roof. Internet dies. We need an internet nerd on this show. It sounds like we've made our decision between comic book nerds and
Yeah.
sci-fi. Dave, you voted for sci-fi. I voted for sci-fi. Mark, you were originally going comic book. You
Yeah.
flipped. You were in the middle of telling a story about being at a Star Trek convention where
Yeah.
some dork was being whipped as a Klingon.
Yeah.
Go on.
A- And oh well, there like the moment's passed now. I've
No, no, it
lost the
hasn't.
fervor. I've lost the fervor of the sexual fervor. No, but there were just people grunting in the back of the room on mobility scooters, and they were like moving their scooters forwards and backwards, grunting like Klingons, going like, it was
Cathy,
it was
how does this not sway you?
Because I don't think it's representative of sci-fi.
But then Cathy, here's another example. Just like the kind of person is like, oh, I've been called in to jury duty, and then they wear their Starfleet uniform.
Okay.
Are you speaking from experience, Mark?
No, but I know I know of people who have done this because that's like, oh, this is the way I dress up.
Okay, look, we've got a panel of four. Unfortunately, Cathy, you've been outvoted 3-1. Sci-fi nerds are nerdier than comic book nerds. We're moving on to our next matchup. We are halfway through fantasy nerds versus improv nerds.
Ugh.
How are we feeling, Cathy? Let's go to you immediately.
Ooh, this is hard, actually.
You made the noise that I indicated to Dave earlier today as we were going over today's show that I think is indicative of what makes for feelings about someone being a nerd when you go, ugh.
No, but this is more like I honestly don't know. I think
It's
I'm gonna.
hard.
Yeah, can I?
This is not a gimme like the first one.
No, can you come back to me?
So
Okay, we'll go back. Dave, let's go. Fantasy enthusiasts.
So I
or
think
improv
fantasy has a lot of overlap with, I would say, Ren Fair, and I would
That's
say
true.
maybe LARPers also.
Yeah, it's massive.
So what would define a fantasy nerd? Like someone who would they dress up as their favorite character?
Look, I'll say this. My argument would be it's not so different than the way that I defined a sci-fi nerd, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. You're enjoying that type of media. Other like, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or, the Hobbit.
Maybe a fantasy nerd is someone who would go to the Harry Potter movies wearing robes and
Or
bringing
jury
wands.
duty.
Bring their robes. Yeah, but
Yeah.
people don't go to jury duty dressed as Harry Potter. They
I'll throw
do
this
go-
out there too. And I only know this because there was some like article about it. Wasn't there a group of nerds at McGill who played
yeah.
Quidditch, which is like a game
true.
in the movie where you ride a broom, but they
Yes.
just held it between their legs running.
I
That's
have-
a fantasy nerd.
I
Kathy,
have a
let's
fun
go
fact.
to
You guys know Xander Van Schell.
Yeah.
Yes, he actually invented the sport Quidditch, and it's on Wikipedia. He is the person who invented it. That's a fun.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't invent the
Sorry,
sport.
improv.
He invented playing it, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying, but it was a
Okay.
sport until he brought it into reality. So it's a fun piece of.
Very
Yeah,
nerdy.
we know the person who invented it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that
Who
true?
invented it? Albus
Yes.
Dumbledore? Who?
I don't know if
Kathy,
that's something you want to boast.
Remind me, but were you in a Harry Potter improv show?
No, I've never done the Harry Potter improv show.
Never
Hannah
done it.
Carmel has never asked me to do the Harry Potter improv show.
She's never
Why do
asked
you
any
think
of
that
us.
is, Kathy? Do you
I
think
don't
it has
think-
to do with your cool standing?
I don't think that she thinks I'm committed to Harry Potter.
Okay.
I couldn't read it.
All right. Mark, why is that?
Well, I think by the time I heard about it, it was just I couldn't start at the first book. It was way too it was for too young an audience.
Okay, well, we're spending a lot of time on the fantasy nerds here. How do we feel about improv nerds? We all
We're trying to avoid the topic.
not at all. We all do it. Some of us make our living off of it. How do we feel that the improv nerd stacks up against the fantasy nerd? Dave, let's go to you.
Well, I think that we can
As
all.
someone who's most certainly read the UCB manual front to back multiple times.
I mean, I have. I've read many improv books front to back multiple times. I think that, improv's embarrassing. I think that
It certainly can be.
it can be. It was something that I avoided inviting anybody to come see me do for
Is
a
there
solid
anything, as it pertains to the form, is there anything worse than hearing a group of improvisers warm up from another room?
maybe watching an improviser photo shoot. That might be worse.
Well, it
Or-
depends on the type of photo shoot.
That's-
The photos are often humiliating.
It's always people lying on each other or
Yeah, there's always someone doing this for some reason.
Uh-oh. Oh, I thought you were gonna do like arms out.
No, not arms out.
There's
there
one
are-
person who's lying sideways on a couple other people a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Improv, it's you're studying how to do make believe the best,
Sure.
which I mean is pathetic.
But it is a performance art.
It's a performance art, so that's kind of cool.
It can also be a stepping stone to other things.
Not for us.
Well, that's not true. For me, it is not true.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Am I allowed to say what you do? I don't even know.
Nope.
Okay.
You cannot. But that's not the only thing.
Sure.
I've received parts in movies because of this. I've made substantial money voiceover acting directly because of improv.
Well,
That's true.
Congratulations.
Yeah, some of us succeed at it.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, I think in order to go further, you actually have to spend a substantial amount of time and effort in order
Yes.
to follow that.
Yes.
Whereas a lot of so does an improv nerd include the engineer or lawyer who comes to take improv to get better at public speaking? Or
I think it depends on
Cathy
how they
says
handle
no.
it. Kathy, you're saying no. How do you respond?
No, because they're not really they're just coming for a class or two and then they're leaving.
Yeah.
They're not nerding out over improv usually.
I think you have to argue over the beats of a herald or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it changes if somebody's a really good improviser and they're an improv nerd, then it's way more cool. And if they're bad, but they have all the
Yeah.
knowledge.
Being funny is cool.
Yes, being funny is cool and then everything else gets wiped away. But if they're bad, they have all of this wealth of knowledge that they're imparting on everybody, then that's
Yep.
not nerdy.
That's true. That's pathetic.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, at first I was going to argue for improv being nerdier. We've made a lot of good cases why it isn't.
Yeah, I think James, you're the prime example. Why?
Well,
why
there's many prime
why,
examples.
why it's cool, right?
Well, I never said it was cool. It's on the list because it's nerdy.
Right. Oh, okay.
There's
But
nothing cool on this list.
But I
Isn't it
think, Game of
cool to be
Thrones, for
nerdy?
instance, was big.
I didn't even think about Game of Thrones.
Was a
Yeah.
big fantasy. It's like a gritty if you consider if you're looking at the show or the books, particularly the beginning of the show, gritty fantasy. People really liked it. It captured the imagination of the masses. You don't have to be a huge nerd to be into that kind of stuff.
But it also caused many people to nerd and rage out once the later seasons were happening and the season finale or whatever.
But I think if you don't like the end of it doesn't make you a nerd. You're just upset that something you enjoyed turned.
I think it's about how you're upset.
Sure.
I
How
agree.
okay?
I agree.
How are we voting this one? This is a hard one. Kathy, let's go to you. What does your gut tell you?
I think the fantasy nerd is nerdier.
Okay. I'm also going to go fantasy. And the reason is if done right, you don't take improv with you when you leave. You don't walk around in the outfit.
But I would say equally.
You can say this is your vote.
Yeah, I'm gonna say equally if done right. Being into a Game of Thrones, reading, I haven't even finished Lord of the Rings, the books. I started them twice and I got bored at
But you
Tom
finished the
Bombadil.
UCB manual.
I did finish the UCB manual, sure.
Okay.
Riveting front to back.
Yeah.
I would say that if done right, fantasy's fine. You enjoy it for what it is. You enjoy
No
the
one's
stories.
arguing against that though.
But you're making the same argument for improv, is what I'm saying.
Saying walking around wearing a cloak and going, "Am I precious?" Mark, let's go to you.
I'm gonna say improv nerd because I can't imagine what a fantasy nerd is.
Well, it's interesting because we see more improv nerds as well.
Yeah, that's it. But I think I haven't been to conventions. I'm pretty like disassociated from a lot of this stuff. I'm not as tied into a lot of these other nerddoms, I think.
I think for the sake of finding out what our tie rules are, I have to go with improv also.
Yeah, good.
The tie rules are we leave it to the audience and majority rules.
Great. Let's do it.
Yeah, what's Dungeons and Dragons? Is that a fantasy nerd?
That's a role-playing game. Isn't that under role-playing game?
Role-playing game because there's a variety of
That's
other
why
role-playing.
I can't in good conscience vote for fantasy.
Do we have
because
role-playing
it's
game
RPG.
as part of the
Role-playing game is next week.
That's RP games. Got it.
Yeah, RP game. Okay, so Cathy, you're not budging. Fantasy. I'm feeling like I want to budge now.
What swayed you?
My own thought of how I see more improv nerds. But on the surface, looking at fantasy nerds would make me... Does it? Coming in from the chat, we've got fantasy. There's one vote for fantasy. So we're going to leave it to the audience. We haven't had a tiebreaker yet, so I won't budge for the sake of the fun of the tiebreaker. If you're watching, vote now. What's nerdier, fantasy or improv? Fantasy or improv, we're going to determine which moves on. Right now, we've got a second vote for fantasy.
I almost feel like we have 3 votes because Andrew Mackay says fantasy kids get beat up.
Fantasy kids get beat up. He also writes, quote, I think if you didn't get beat up in high school for liking it, then it's not really nerdy. Fantasy kids would get bullied. What is that? That your Harry Potter socks?
I mean, people like improv nerds would get heckled.
By who? The audience, because the show's stand-up comedians get heckled.
If you do like an improv show for like your high school or something like that.
Can I turn off my camera for a second? Like if I just black it out, is that gonna?
Yeah, sure. That's fine. I'm putting 30 seconds on the clock for people to try to tie this. Otherwise, the fantasy nerds have got it.
I like Barnwell's comment.
Yeah, there's James routinely dresses up as Frodo.
It's Froyo.
Froyo? I dress as frozen yogurt. Well, it looks clear. Look, it looks like fantasy is taking this one.
What do you think Marc's doing?
Masturbating? Okay, it's done. 30 seconds on the clock. Fantasy nerds have defeated improv nerds. I was going to jump ship, but I like the idea of seeing what a tiebreaker might look like. So, improv has lost to fantasy. We're moving on to our final bracket of tonight. Video gamers versus bronies. Video gamers versus bronies. This might be a gimme. Cathy's not convinced, though. So, Cathy, you think bronies are... they're one step away from being sex criminals.
Yeah.
Okay, argue it.
I think that to be strangely attracted is right. They're attracted.
I don't believe that they're... Marc, I'm just going to throw to you for you weigh in on this.
For the record, I am not a brony. I think they're technically fans, but I think the question of why that is.
I think, Marc, now I think, I'm not asking you because I think you're a brony. Isn't it meant to be like, it's so ironic that we like bronies?
I don't think so.
Really? Okay.
I'm going to look this up. So why don't you go to Dave?
I'm looking it up right now.
I'll look it up too.
Well,
Okay,
if Dave's looking it up, we're going to let Dave look it up.
I'm not looking it up. I'm going to say video game nerds, and here's why. I think that there's just way more of them. And I think when you add up all the nerd energy in the world, from video game fans to bronies. I feel like bronies is such a tiny community.
Yeah.
This is it.
people.
This is a very
I
compelling.
went
It's so
to Gamescom in Germany which is the biggest video game fan festival in the world, and there were 400,000 people there, and these were passionate people. They were all in costumes. You could buy anything you wanted there. Video and yeah, these people are committed to their cause. They write reviews. They're playing hundreds and thousands of hours. Man years are just wiped off the face of the earth because people are dedicated to playing these things. I think that they're the
so,
bigger nerds.
so get a load of this. BronyCon exists.
Yes. Yeah.
But how many people go?
But who cares about how many people? Think about
Yeah.
the average level of nerd.
Yeah, we're not talking about how, because I think it's a compelling argument. In the most recent one was in 2019, so maybe it fell by the wayside due to the COVID times. Over 10,000 people attended.
Yeah, but we're in 2024. There's probably like a spike of brony action for like
Well,
1
yes.
year after a documentary came out.
From what I'm reading, none of this
Documentary.
has to do with sexual arousal.
Yeah, the documentary was the extremely unexpected adult fans of My Little Pony, and it came out in 2012.
But if we're basing that, then if we're look, and I'm gonna play devil's advocate. If we're saying the one that has the most fans is the most, then we might as well just give it to the comic book fans now.
Yes.
Or the video
Comic
game
book
fans.
fans are in the shitter right now.
I'm saying, excuse me, I meant video game fans.
Oh yeah.
I'm not
Cathy-
saying that's the only argument. I'm saying that
I love it. I love it as an argument.
I'm saying that there's so many, like, people spend their entire life writing about games, playing games.
But just listen to this. Just
become
listen
a
to
sport.
That's cool.
Not esports aren't cool.
Okay, what's cooler, esports or a guy in his 40s with posters of My Little Pony
Thank you.
up all over his friggin' bedroom? Dave,
I think, look, whatever you like, you like. I'm if you're passionate about if you're passionate about having a horse on your wall.
no, that's not what we're talking about. It's not a horse on the wall. It's a cartoon pony for little girls.
I'm
This
sticking
guy's just
with
been-
video games.
Yeah. All right.
It has to be brony. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
There's-
Mark, tell us why.
in terms of nerdy. Okay,
Oh.
so what is what are the various definitions? Like what makes a nerd a nerd? And I think Dave, you hit on to it. There's passion, obsessiveness, but I think it often
I think passion
too
makes
far.
you a fan. I think it's more. I think it goes closer to what Cathy mentioned
No.
when your identity becomes that.
sure, but I think it's also like anything that's nerdy is also associated with withdrawing somewhat from
Mm.
like society. Like it's like, oh,
Okay.
I'm not in the popular groups, or I'm not even in with everybody else.
Yeah.
I withdraw into my little corner to explore bronydom, and I think that's what makes a nerd. So
Wow.
the fantasy nerds, like, oh, well, we all read Game of Thrones, but that doesn't seem so bad. Or the video game nerds, sure, Dave, like they can dress up as Master Chief, but it's like, I don't know.
Well-
That doesn't seem as bad as
Yeah. Like,
Or
look, you can
30.
be someone who gets home from work, throws on your PlayStation for an hour or so and plays Street Fighter. But then there's the guys who are in like with like their light up keyboard, and it's like you're mentioning, Mark, they've got their headset on, like, you noob, and like saying unkind and hateful speech.
I don't even think
Like-
those are the video game nerds. Those are the trolls.
they're
They're-
well, okay. Well, where's the separation point there, Dave?
I think if you're spending
Why are you defending bronies?
me,
Yeah.
Yeah, how are you fighting for video game nerds over some guy named like Gordy who's walking around with a My Little Pony t-shirt on?
because my sense is that
You are a brony.
no, my sense is that the bronies, they have problems.
Oh.
I think,
But there's gamers that have problems.
sure, but there's also
Well, guy like someone who's I remember I used to work at a video game company, just as you did, Dave, and I worked in the group with the most nerds possible, testers. We had a long weekend, and one guy said, someone's like, "Oh, what are you doing this weekend?" He's like, "I'm gonna get into my bedroom and I'm gonna play World of Warcraft all week long.
Exactly.
That's all I'm gonna do." So they have problems too.
I mean, I would say that they're passionate.
Yeah.
It's their life. It's their social. Their
We're,
whole social
we're doing the
dynamic.
vote. We're doing the
All
vote.
right.
So
I just
Dave,
want to
you're
say, coming in from the chat, I'm with Dave on this.
so another
Oh.
brony.
Not everyone who likes, believes that video games are strong, come from a strong nerd culture, is a brony, James.
They all of these come from strong nerd cultures. That's why they're on the list. That's why you don't see working out on this list.
Could be.
No. Thomas Barnwell writes, quote, "It's okay to be a brony as long as you tell your parole officer."
But that's not nerd. That's criminal.
Well,
Well, what?
take a long, hard look in the mirror, Dave.
I'm not a brony.
Kathy, can I get?
Brony.
We haven't really heard from you on this one, Kathy.
No.
Let's hear it.
My opinions have been cooking.
Okay.
I think that there's something about playing video games where there's a goal, you're invested in an outcome, it's competitive, there's a little bit of aggressiveness that makes it cooler than what I would perceive to be somebody who wants to be shielded from any aggression, any any like negative imagery.
Yeah, they're living in a fantasy world.
Yes.
I
pink,
like My Little Ponies.
No, they're
pink
bros,
and
dude.
blue, of pink and blue and green and sparkles and cuteness, and that's just what they want at the end of their day or all day. I don't know. So
Wow.
to me, it's the bronies are a little bit nerdier. Yeah.
Mark, final thoughts on bronies or
Yeah, big time brony. I think that's the one that takes the cake there.
I will say more of a spirited discussion on this one than most people would believe. But Dave, you were fighting hard for video
I
game
love it.
nerds.
It's
I'm
got
glad
bro
he
in the
did.
name. That's cool to me.
Okay, so we've gone through the first
8
subsets here, and we've
Yeah.
got our winners for the night.
Yeah.
LARPers have defeated very quickly cinephiles. Science fiction enthusiasts have defeated comic book nerds.
Wow. That's crazy.
Fantasy nerds defeated improv nerds by way of a tiebreaker vote from the audience. And bronies have defeated video gamers. So advancing to the quarterfinals out of the Sweet 16 are LARPers, sci-fi nerds, fantasy nerds, and bronies. Wow, this has been a hell of a night.
I agree.
It's been truly unbelievable. There's
It
I
has.
will say there's one subset that I wish I had added that occurred to me after which these adult babies.
Oh yeah.
That might be that's maybe one toke over the line.
I know an adult baby. I know.
Oh,
Yeah.
You do?
I do, yeah.
What do they do?
He would ask one of my friend's sisters, who is a mother, to babysit him over Zoom.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say ask her for milk.
That too, probably.
okay. Let's round it out here. Dave, final thoughts tonight. Night 1 of March Madness Nerd Subset.
You know, we rode the line, James. There was a few times I was uncomfortable. I felt as though
Yeah, when
we were pushing
bronies
a
were
little
getting
bit too
persecuted.
far. I feel like some of these people, they just need a little bit of love in their life, and we're going.
No
the
one
wrong
said
way.
no one said they don't deserve love.
Well, I feel like they don't deserve bullying either. So
I don't think anyone's been bullied tonight.
I disagree.
Yeah.
Well, except for maybe you.
Yeah, Dave's
Mark,
been bullied.
final thoughts tonight. Night 1,
Oh,
folks.
yeah. I mean, look, I love nerddom. I hate nerddom. I love and hate because I've experienced it so closely. I understand it better than most, perhaps.
Yeah, well, that's why you're here.
Yeah. So I think I'm looking forward to the day when we determine who's the king of the pile the king of the heap.
Well,
And
it'll be in the end of the month.
Yeah.
Cathy, final thoughts.
I thought it was fantastic. I'm disappointed with the sci-fi one. I thought that was. I just don't agree with that one. However, I will say overall it was a success.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I don't think there was any bullying. I don't think anybody's above being publicly criticized.
Yeah.
Oh,
No group of people.
I love it.
So
I
that was great.
absolutely love it.
I don't know.
Dave, can we pull up the bracket one more time before we say goodnight?
Sure.
So we're going to give you right now just a quick preview of what is to come next week, 1 week from tonight, March 11th. The lineup is as follows. In the second portion of the Sweet 16, we have got pro wrestling fans against Ren Fair enthusiasts, computer nerds against Disney adults, cosplayers, aka costume players, against role-playing gamers, then weebs against collectors. That is next week on the 11th. Quarterfinals take place on the 18th, and the semifinals and finals, plus maybe more, happen on the final Monday in March. Guys, we've done it. What a night.
woo!
Great.
I'm pleased. I was worried too, Dave, but I think James really reined it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the affirmation, Mark.
Woo!
Folks, that's our show. It's time to love you and leave you. For Cathy, Mark, and Dave, I am James. You are you. We were here. Good night. Goodbye. Farewell. And of course, be well.